Yeah. Thank you for having us today here at the Redeye Life Science and Technology Day. My name is Gustav H. I am the CEO of PILA PHARMA. We are a small British biotech listed here in Stockholm on the First North list under the ticker called PILA, PILA. We are in the space of metabolic diseases, primarily diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. However, the target that we work with within PILA Pharma is called TRPV1. This has traditionally been associated as a painful target. However, we believe that it could play a vital role in regulating other inflammatory disorders, such as, for example, diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. Within PILA Pharma, we have an asset called XEND-0501. This is a TRPV1 antagonist, so it's supposed to block this receptor. This particular molecule that we work with has a very, very good safety profile. Now, this is something that is of huge interest within this space, as these types of molecules have traditionally been associated with quite some side effects. Our molecule has been in 8 clinical trials in the past, so it has been in over 300 patients already. So we have a good idea of the safety on this particular molecule, which is, of course, of great importance once you progress through the clinic. We have been in 2 clinical trials ourselves within overweight people living with type 2 diabetes in order to establish safety within these patient groups. We are about to commence another dose escalation trial now in order to assess how patients will react once we go up in dose and over longer duration. So this is, of course, something that is very interesting given the development that we see in the world, where obesity medication and diabetes medication is associated with substantial costs for nations and governments around the world.
Have a seat. So thanks a lot for the introduction to your company, Gustav. And I thought we could start right away with the press release PILA announced a little while ago, where you announced the changes to the PPCT03 trial plan. Can you provide some context to these changes and how much it will delay the CTA timeline?
Yes. So originally in the summer, we took in some extra money in order to get this study started. And in relation to that, we were in discussions with a clinical partner that would help us conduct these trials. And they were intending to do it on their own private clinic. Now, given that this is a dose escalation trial where we would go to never seen before dose levels within this patient group, our scientific advisors strongly recommended us that we thought about conducting this trial in a hospital setting. So in the end, we were in discussion with the CRO and came to the conclusion that the best way forward was to go back and look at whether we could do it at a hospital site. Now, we have chosen to conduct this trial at the site of a scientific advisor to the company, Mark Evans, in Cambridge in the UK. So, and in connection to this decision, it was also decided to seek a scientific advice with the UK authorities in order to understand how they view this type of molecule and its safety profile in order to have a good relationship for when we hopefully move forward and into deeper and longer clinical trials.
Right. And to follow up, do you have any view on the extent of how much it will sort of push the start of this clinical trial?
I mean, so we originally were planning for this to get started here in the autumn. This has been pushed quite a bit by now. What can be said is that we did not sign the contract for the whole trial itself. So in terms of costs, there's been relatively little, extra costs associated with this delay, aside from, of course, having to pay wages for extra months. But that being said, we are we're right on time in the sense of trying to figure out when we can get the next earliest slot with the authorities in the UK. From there, it is said that we can expect to potentially send in an application within a very short amount of weeks. And then let's see how fast the timelines are from when you send an application to you potentially get an approval. And in the meantime, of course, we have a lot of preparation in the sense of trying to figure out who's going to help us with the recruiting for this particular site, and how are we going to do all the monitoring and extra tests, etc.
Right. And can you provide some insight, if you have the information available, that is relating to the structure of this trial, and maybe how many patients you expect to enroll?
Yeah. So the idea is that we will include up to 40 patients, and 40 is a specific number. It's not well defined for now. It's somewhere in between 30 and 40, and of course there's an association with how much each individual patient will cost. That gives us some limitations for this, but equally so, it's the more important factor for us is that we have a number of patients included that allows us to statistically calculate whether or not our molecule could potentially also regulate body weight over these 3 months, and especially if we can monitor them potentially as they get titrated up, so we can see what the effects are once we up the doses. But on a basic level, we would do measurements at start and finish in order to assess this, and to some degree, potentially as well, the degree of weight loss. So do patients lose body mass in the sense of pure fat mass or pure muscle mass, or what's the balance here? Because this is something that has been very much a topic with modern weight loss drugs, is that they have a high percentage of muscle mass being lost, which is not ideal for patients.
Right, makes sense. So I want to touch on another topic relating to, you're, I think you mentioned one of the few, or maybe the only one with this type of molecule targeting these diseases.
Yes.
Can't you tell us more about why you think that is?
Yeah, so we know that there are a couple companies working with these molecules, but in different types of formulations and for different diseases, right? So we believe we might be the only ones working on metabolic conditions such as diabetes and obesity. And I think that the deep understanding is that it comes down to safety profiles. So these molecules were tested far and wide in the early 2000s, and many of them had a very strong side effect profile, primarily hypothermia. So patients would get fever. And of course, it's not ideal to push patients into fever, especially if they are type 2 diabetics, where they have quite a few problems already. So a lot of molecules were discarded back in that time. And I believe that we, at least internally in the team, think and feel that we might have found a molecule that seems very tolerable and has been in a lot of patients, both in safety and healthy volunteers, but equally so in sick patients. And we can see that at least on short-term trials, like up to 1 month's dosing, which is what it has been in the past, and 4 milligrams in type 2 diabetics, but up to 10 milligrams in healthy volunteers, it seems as if it seems very tolerable. So we're comfortable in this in thinking that we might have found something that could potentially be narrative changing down the line. If we can showcase that this is actually a useful target for regulating these types of diseases, well, then the scientific community will have to be educated a little bit, because then we've actually changed the story.
Right. And on that topic, being sort of one of the few at least, or maybe the only then with a particular molecule, how does that play into potential combination treatments in such indications?
Yeah, that's difficult for me to say, because it depends a lot on any opposing company or any partner company and their interests, and of course their knowledge. Potentially they could have worked with this type of molecule in the past and have a lot of internal knowledge on how it works and the potential upsides, but potential downsides as well. From our side, what we think is mostly interesting is that we have a small molecule, so it is seemingly quite easy to both produce and scale, but equally so to combine with other types of molecules that targets different receptors or hormones, for example. And equally so, we believe that this is going to be the way forward in the market. Like, we already see that now, that companies are not divesting, but they're looking into other pathways just outside of GLP-1s and outside of amylin, which is the next big thing that's coming through now. We see companies that are really targeting some very different pathways, considering many different things. So we are not a victim of the market, I would say, but we're looking into a market where we will take our chance, and we will see if we can produce good results with this. I'm sure that a lot of companies will find interested in.
Right. And on another topic, you have pretty recently announced some new preclinical research related to cardiovascular disease. Can you tell us more about what is your plan here?
Yes, so I mean, the target we work with, TRPV1, is also called the capsaicin receptor. So it's related to the, to chili as such. And I know our founder and our chairman, Dode, she often likes to call it the chili receptor because it gives people an easier understanding of what we're dealing with. Now, at least in Asia and many parts of Africa as well, chili has always been associated with good cardiovascular health. So we have thought it was very interesting and, of course, quite natural to progress and see, could we potentially play a role in terms of maybe downregulating the underlying inflammation that causes some of these cardiovascular diseases. In the last trial we ran, which was only a 1-month trial in overweight type 2 diabetics, we had a very, very strong reduction in a biomarker for heart failure and also associated with elevated blood pressure. So this new trial we're looking into now is called abdominal aorta aneurysm. So it's when the aorta that runs from all the way down and up your chest. In some patients, primarily, at least according to the literature, it is associated with high blood pressure. This aorta will swell up to the point where it can burst. And if it bursts, you're very likely going to bleed to death. So it's a disease that annually kills a lot of people, and there's no current treatment for it. So the trial is run here in Uppsala, quite a short time from here, and it's basically it's a very quick study in a mouse model where we're going to see if we can limit the progression of aortas to the point where they can burst. So if we can have a preventive effect. And that's about it I can say for it for now. I mean, we have started the trial and it's ongoing, and we are the sponsor together with the University of Uppsala, and I hope we can communicate something more on this very soon, and hopefully something good.
Interesting. And if we change the scope a little bit and extend the horizon a little bit, can you tell us a little bit of your expectations a few years down the line relating to, let's say, a potential exit or a potential licensing partner? Do you have any internal discussions on what this...
We always dream, right? We always dream. I mean, of course, it's a challenging world. I mean, we see that, market conditions can change quite rapidly. So we're being very prudent in the sense of how we operate with our business, and we're just trying to progress slowly but nicely. We know that we have quite a bit of work to do in the sense of educating the scientific community around the receptor that we work with, and that its role might not be limited to just pain treatment, and that there might actually be molecules out there that could be somewhat tolerable and safe. Aside from that, I think I think it's oblivious to everyone that the obesity pandemic and the diabetes pandemic that is associated to this is going to continue to rise. So there will be a need for new treatments, especially treatments that can be scaled. So it can reach a larger population on a global basis. So we see quite a bit of interest from especially from big pharma companies now, in the sense of they want to understand our molecule and our mechanism a little bit better, so that they could potentially evaluate whether we would be a fit for their pipeline, either as a standalone or as a combinable product. That's really not up for me to decide or to define. So from our point of view, we're just looking at a future where we right now are one of the only companies working with TRPV1. And that might give us an edge, because if we can showcase that it works, then we really have quite a bit of a leap to everyone else who may want to consider this. That being said, we also see a potential future where it could be interesting to develop the company even further, and let's say develop a pipeline where we have different tracks, potentially different molecules, doing diabetes, doing cardiovascular, potentially doing pain. So there's a lot of different considerations ongoing, I would say, and of course financing and funding is a pivotal part of this, which gives us some limitations. But I believe fully that if we can showcase some strong results, then we're also in a better position, because I mean, in this industry, it's the data is what speaks the truth, as they say in Texas, where we just were a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So on that topic, I mean, you are targeting pretty large indication, type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular, where there's a lot of investments going into these fields right now, and it's a lot of competition, recent data coming out from Amgen recently, etc. But can't you just give us some flavor on, I mean, how is it as a small company, as you are, to navigate this field and the challenges?
Pretty daunting.
With it?
Pretty daunting. I think what we... to a large degree, we also find some level of comfort in the sense of knowing that, or at least understanding that we might be the only ones working with this particular target. I mean, if we were in this target and everyone else was doing the same, it would be a little bit more depressing, perhaps, because we know that it takes money to progress, and we don't have the muscles currently. So I would say it's of course very interesting, and we see. Largely, when we go to scientific conferences, we see mostly smaller biotechs being the ones that challenge the status quo, and then the big guys, they center around bigger themes for a couple of years in a row, and then they change to something new. So from our side, I think we find it to be quite an interesting position, and for sure we go a little bit under the radar. Of course, I'm not in a position to comment on whether we are worth what the stock exchange thinks we are. But that being said, we believe we have something that's very unique and something that could be of value down the line. And to what company or to what consumer, that's a bit early to define right now.
Right. So following up, as you mentioned, it will require capital to take this asset forward into development. And can't you just give us also a little bit of context to how you intend to proceed here, or maybe to some extent how much do you need?
Yeah. So I mean, we conducted a directed issue in the summer. And of course, that gave us quite a bit of confidence in seeing and knowing that we could engage with particular investors, both new and current, to really land the money that could progress us a certain part of the way. Now, going forward, of course, the amounts that we will need to conduct, let's say a phase 2b or a phase 3, are way bigger. So we have some work to do going forward in the sense of, let's say, building up our valuation. That's the easy way to say it. But I firmly believe that we own this molecule fully. We don't have any debt. I think that's a very strong advantage as a small company for us. We don't have any immediate loans that we need to pay back in Q1, for example, like I know that some other companies have. And that really puts a lot of pressure on management. So from our side, we're very focused on really trying to exploit, like, okay, we own this molecule. What else can it be used for? Could it be this cardiovascular disease? I mean, if we have concrete proof of concept data here, who knows whether that could land as a partnership agreement or a licensing deal with another company that could then, let's say, potentially give an upfront that could be funneled back into the development. So there's different ways to do it, I would say. I think everyone in Stockholm knows that rights issues is not the way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. That will be interesting to follow your company moving forward.
Thank you, Filip.